Hi everyone, welcome to this video lesson where we're going to be talking about figurative language. Now, we need to be able to write using figurative language, but also be able to identify figurative language, okay? So it's very important that we understand what types of figurative language there are and how we define them and how we use them, okay? So if we look at the screen, we've got 6 types. We've got a simile, metaphor, personification, hyperbole, onomatopoeia, and alliteration. So we have spoken about these, but let's go through the brief descriptions of each one really quickly. So a simile is a comparison of two things using the word like or as. It helps us understand something by comparing it to something else. For example, her smile is as bright as the sun. So we're comparing her smile with the sun, and we're using the word as. Okay, we're saying her smile is as bright as the sun. We could use the word like. We could say her smile is like the sun. That would also be a simile. Okay, now if that's a bit confusing, don't worry, because we are going to look at some examples in a minute. And then we have metaphor. This is also a comparison, but it doesn't use like or as. Instead, it says that something is something else. It is something else. It's not like something else, it is something else. So here's the example. The world is a stage. It's not like a stage, it is a stage. We don't have the word like. We literally say one thing is another thing. Once again, if that's a bit confusing, don't worry. There are some examples coming in a minute. And then we've got personification. Personification gives human qualities to things that aren't human, like animals or objects. It makes a story more interesting by making things come alive, like saying the flowers danced in the wind. Okay, now humans dance, flowers don't dance, but it looks like they're dancing. So by using that word, it brings it to life. If you imagine a flower in the wind swaying from side to side, it might look like it's dancing. Okay, so we create a vivid image in our reader's head. Okay, then we've got hyperbole. This is when we exaggerate something to make a point or create strong feeling. It's like saying, I'm so hungry I could eat 1,000,000 sandwiches. This is hyperbole. Of course, no one could eat 1,000,000 sandwiches. It'd be impossible. But by saying million, by really exaggerating, we're emphasizing the point that we're hungry. Okay, that's hyperbole. It's all about exaggeration. Then we've got onomatopoeia, and this is when words sound like the noises they describe, like buzz for a bee or boom for thunder. So if you look at the word buzz and boom, both of those words are the same sounds as the words that they're talking about. Okay, that can be a bit tricky to understand. So if you are struggling with that one, just wait for some more examples in a minute. And then finally, we've got alliteration. And this is when we use the same sound at the beginning of several words in a row. Now, it doesn't have to be in a row. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But for now, let's understand it as the same sound repeating itself word after word, okay? But we'll talk more about that in a minute. It makes sentences fun to say and easy to remember, like Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Now, we've got and we've got the 4 sounds in that sentence, and they are interrupted by and the. Okay, so they're not in a row, but these are such small words, okay? They're such small words. They are interrupting it, but this would still count as alliteration because we do have that repetitive S sound, okay? Now let's move on. So let's have a look at these sentences on the left. Now, on the left, we have got some sentences, and on the right, we have got different types of figurative language. And what I'd like to do is pause the video and have a go at matching the sentences up to the figurative language devices on the right. And once you've done that, press play. Okay, so the first one says, the rain pitter-pattered against the window pane, creating a soothing rhythm. Did you manage to find out the answer to this one? Of course, the answer is onomatopoeia. Pitter-patter sounds like the word it's describing. The rain is pitter-pattering. And if you imagine rain, that's the sound it makes. Then we've got the wind howled like a mournful ghost through the desolate streets, sorry. And with this one, you'll see the word like is a bit of a giveaway. The wind is like a mournful ghost. Do you remember which figurative language that one is? It's a simile. It's a simile, yeah? The wind howled like a mournful ghost. Now, you might say that that's personification because the wind howling kind of gives maybe a human attribute to something that's not non-humans. Humans, I guess we could howl. We don't really howl, do we? That's more what dogs do and wolves do. But if you did say personification, you're not completely wrong. So well done if you said that. But this one lends itself more to simile. And then we've got Sally's silky smooth voice soared softly through the serene summer evening. And of course, that is alliteration. We've got, once again, that S sound. Let's have a look. How many do we have? We've got Sally's silky smooth voice soared softly through the serene summer evening. Alliteration, we've got that repetitive S sound, and they're not in a row. Now, if we do use them in a row, we don't want to overdo it. Maybe 3 at most, 3 S sounds, or any sound. But if we interrupt the words, for example, we've got the word voice and through the, then we can do as many S sounds as we like because it doesn't seem too much if we interrupt them with other words, okay? And then we've got her laughter was a melody, weaving through the air and captivating all who heard it. This one might be a bit tricky. The answer is metaphor. Why is it metaphor? Well, was is the past form of the word is. So we can use was instead of is. And remember, metaphors is when we're saying something is something. Her laughter is a melody. Her laughter was a melody, okay? So those words are the same word, aren't they? So this is a metaphor. Then we've got, I've told you 1,000,000 times to clean your room. You've probably heard your parents say that before. Of course, they haven't told you 1,000,000 times. Maybe they told you 3 or 4 times, but the reason they'd say 1,000,000 times is to emphasize the point that they're trying to make. They want you to go and tidy your room, okay? So which one is it? When we exaggerate, that's hyperbole. And then finally, the old house groaned. It groaned like a human, like a person might groan, as if burdened by the weight of its memories. So the old house groaned is personification because the old house is groaning. It's doing something that humans do. Okay, so well, if you got all of those, and if you didn't get all of those, don't worry. Hopefully you understand why you were wrong. And next time you'll be correct. Okay, let's have a look at what's next. So this is a poem, okay? I'm going to read a poem first. So it says, the sun blazed like a fiery furnace in the cloudless sky. Its scorching rays were arrows piercing through the earth's defenses. The temperature soared to 1,000 degrees, scorching everything in its path. Nature's fury roared through the landscape, shaking trees and rattling windows. Amidst the chaos, birds chirped urgently, warning of the impending danger. Still, the resilient roses bloomed, bravely facing the relentless heat. This is a poem, okay? But within the poem, we've got 6 different types of figurative languages. We've got 6 sentences and 6 types of figurative language. So each sentence is a different example of figurative language. So for your first task, we're going to call this, let's call this task A. I'll explain why in a minute. It's not task 1, it's task A. And that's because I made a mistake and the next task is called task 1, and then the task after that's called task 2. So this is task A, okay? So your first task is, can you write down the types of figurative language in order that are used in this sentence, okay? And if you need a reminder, remember, rewind the video and have a look at the definitions for each type of figurative language. Okay, this is task 1. So I might be covering the screen, so let me hide my camera. Okay, so in this task, we have a story, okay? And throughout the whole story, there are different types of figurative language. Now, there's a few ways that you can do this. Firstly, if you're able to print it, what you can do is create your own key. So for example, you can write simile, red, metaphor, blue, and so on. Create your own key and then underline or highlight each type of figurative language accordingly. And there are many types within this text. If you can't print it, what you might want to do instead is annotate or highlight on your tablet or your computer the words rather than print it out. Do the same thing, create yourself a key, and highlight or underline the sentences according to your own key. Okay. And then once you've done that, sorry, there is a lot for you to do this week. I do apologize, but it's very important we understand figurative language. But the final task, task 2, is choose a famous person. Then once you've thought of a famous person, can you describe them or write something about them? Write 6 sentences about them using simile for one sentence, hyperbole for another, alliteration, metaphor, personification, and onomatopoeia. So 6 sentences about any person that you like, and make sure each sentence uses one type of figurative language. If you can't think or don't want to choose a famous person, maybe you can do it about a friend, yourself, or a family member. Now, one more thing to remember, as I've said to you this week, if you're ever given a task to write creatively using figurative language, but you've forgotten the types of figurative language, remember our acronym. What do we wash our hair with? Shampoo. Okay, but without the last O. And now these letters will help remind us of the different types of figurative language. Okay, so you can see it down here. We've got the S, H, A, M, P, O. Okay, so there's 3 tasks for you to do. Task 2, task 1, and task A. Have a go at doing them. And like I said, I do know that it's quite a lot to do this week, but it's very important that we're confident with figurative language and with our creative writing in general.